And the moment I got home and told my wife, hey, our manager moved on and they looked at me and this other person for a leadership role, but I don't really have any leadership experience, so this other person's going to take it. My wife, she's like, what do you mean you don't have any leadership experience? You were in the Marine Corps for 8 years. You were a corporal, you were a sergeant, you started Nova Hackers and you've been leading that for 10 years at that point or whatever. And there's tons of people in that. How many other leadership things have you done? So 0 leadership experience? What are you talking about?
Hello, podcast world, and welcome to another episode of Exit Buddy, Veteran Stories to Guide You. I'm Kathleen, and I'm happy to join my podcast co-host, who always has something sparkly to share with our audience. So welcome to the studio, Rachel.
Well, thank you, Kathleen. And yes, I promise to bring the sparkle, the noise, and a little bit of funk. But I think we have a friend who is here to bring a great story. So do not make our guest wait any longer. Let's introduce our friend. Let the audience hear who it is. Kathleen, make it happen.
So I'm thrilled to welcome Rob Fuller to the studio with us today. He's a community founder, in addition to being a cybersecurity leader. And as he said before, he has a number of certifications. The best title he holds is father, husband, and a U.S. Marine. Thank you for coming to the show, Devil Dog.
I appreciate you having me. It's an amazing chance to give back to people who are exiting. I wish that I had something like this when I was getting out. So I look forward to having the chance to provide that during the show.
Thanks so much, Rob.
Well, Rob, after an introduction like that, I think we just have to jump right in. And I think a great place to start is maybe taking us back a little bit to your military days. So tell us a little bit about your time in the Marine Corps as a combat engineer and enterprise security engineer. Anything that stand out particularly that you would like to highlight?
I mean, one of the most amazing experiences I had in my life while I was a combat engineer was we were deployed out to Camp Fuji in the Marine Corps, and they have the biggest debt range in the world, at least that I know of, which means that you can use as a very high amount of C4 or pounds of C4, and the largest amount that you can do there is 300 pounds. So we blew up 300 pounds of C4, and it was pretty awesome. So story-wise, going back through the Marine Corps, it was quite the experience. I will say that there was so much that I disagreed with, and I actually got in trouble quite a bit. I have more page 11s than I have duty stations, which is not a good thing. But I also learned a lot and became a different type of person, and someone that I feel that it made me better. So throughout my Marine Corps career, even though I hated a lot of it and complained constantly, I got a lot out of it. I think that military service could go a long way in everybody's life. Just what it creates in you, the camaraderie, the esprit de corps, the idea of getting something done together is something that I feel generally lacking in the civilian space. But anyways, the chance to then switch over from combat engineer to computer security was just a game changer for me. I felt right at home in that space, and it was such a great chance, and I got lucky to have it because I did not finish high school. I didn't have a GED. I had to get my high school diploma through a correspondence course while I was in the Marine Corps just to get through that. So I switched over to computer security and really found my home, really found my place in the world.
I'm hearing a song theme in the back of my head, sort of what doesn't kill us makes us stronger.
Yep, absolutely.
My sisters beat the daylights out of me frequently when I was little. They kept saying, well, we're just making you stronger if we don't kill you. But that's because I was taking up too much time in the bathroom with my long hair in the 70s. So let's talk about your military transition and some of the things that surprised you, because I think, as we talked about in the green room, there are so many different things that you just don't know when you're going through your transition. And I believe you shared with Ashley in our pre-call that you were in a transition class and you heard another Marine say you'd be lucky if you earned $50,000 when you were getting out. So how did that sort of form your mindset as you were going through transition, and specifically about putting a value, a monetary value, on your skill set?
Yeah, so that was actually one of the transition instructors, not a fellow Marine, that told me that. So that was really frustrating. That actually pissed me off quite a bit because it felt like by saying that, you were setting expectations for all the Marines that were in the room of what was possible. And what was really kind of sucky about it was that then a bunch of other government contractors came in and said, hey, we got all these roles that are for 55,000 and 60,000. And it felt so much like a setup. My first role outside of the Marine Corps was $98,000 a year. It just still pisses me off to this day that those types of classes set the bar so low for Marines coming out, because it doesn't give them, I don't think transition assistance gives them a proper sense of what's possible and gives them good tools to make that transition. So I would say that if you are looking to transition out of the Marine Corps, out of the military in general, you get with someone who's been in the industry, who's transitioned for a while. Listen to one of these podcasts and see what's possible. Like, I didn't put leadership on, or any kind of leadership on, my resume for a decade because I didn't think that I had any experience, when I had 8 years of experience in leadership, because that's what the Marine Corps teaches you. That's what the military teaches you. And you have to do it even as an NCO. And so just little tidbits like that is really important. I don't know if you want to transition already to the medical side, but oh my gosh, I messed up in every way, shape, and form on the medical side of things.
I believe we're going to get to that later on. So I don't want to put a blanket and say every single transition instructor is going to tell you something wrong, because there are a few good ones out there. You know, we may hear about the awful stories. We may hear about, I remember when I was transitioning and someone told me to take a blue pen and write on my resume my modifications, because it was supposed to show that I was so busy with my job, I didn't have time to update my resume online. So that was a really bad instructor. So there are going to be bad instructors. There also are going to be really good ones. There's probably going to be a lot more mediocre ones. But I think what we've all said is find a few people who've gone before you and sort of sit down and chat with them. You touched on your leadership skills. And yes, this is something that I don't see a lot of people transitioning out put on their resume, that they have leadership skills. I know that you talked earlier saying, early in your career, you were saying no to leadership roles because you didn't think you had the leadership experience. So can you just sort of expand on what you said earlier about you have leadership? How do you get your mind wrapped around that you do have leadership? And then how do you present that?
Sure. So early in my career, I worked at a company called General Electric. Probably everyone knows that one. Small little company. Now it is, which is crazy. But General Electric, I was on the red team there. I was a senior red teamer there at General Electric. And our leader moved on and went to a different company. And there was kind of me and one other individual who was on the team that was being looked at from a next in line. I almost immediately declined it. And the reason I declined it was I thought I did not have the experience to jump into that role. And the moment I got home and told my wife, hey, our manager moved on and they looked at me and this other person for a leadership role, but I don't really have any leadership experience, so this other person's going to take it. My wife, I think, slapped me upside the head 5 seconds. And she's like, what do you mean you don't have any leadership experience? You were in the Marine Corps for 8 years. You were a corporal, you were a sergeant. You started Nova Hackers and you've been leading that for 10 years at that point, or 5 years at that point, or whatever. And there's tons of people in that. How many other leadership things have you done? Like CCDC. And so zero leadership experience? What are you talking about? Oh man.
Kudos to a wife who does a Gib slap. Yes.
Yeah. But it really took that, honestly, just to reevaluate what I thought was expected. and what leadership experience looked like. I was thinking about it like as a resume line item. I don't have that. So, and then I started adding that, honestly, the leadership experience inside the Marine Corps, the leadership experience as an extracurricular outside doing Nova Hackers and stuff like that. So it took my wife slapping me around a little bit for me to do it. So just to be honest.
Speaking of choosing different roles, you talked a little bit about your transition out and going into the commercial side, but want to talk a little bit more about that. So you pivoted into the cyber roles when you were going into the government space to the commercial sector. What really drove that leap? Was it another slap?
So it was, oh man, how do I say this as nicely as possible?
You're among friends. You don't have to say it nicely.
I was having a hard time with government contracting and the speed at which it operated and the speed at which people in it operated.
We're all friends here. We think we know what you're saying.
Coming from the Marine Corps, we operate quickly. We get things done. We move on to the next task. Like that's the space that I was in, my headspace was in. And when I started working as a contractor outside, it felt like I went from 100 miles an hour to 10. And it was such a rough transition for that. So I stuck with it, even though it was eating me, just the speed of it, because I had a clearance. And that's one of the things that I see and hear a lot from people is I don't want to lose my clearance because that's, X number of dollars that I could get. And ultimately, after about 3 jobs, and it just eat me alive, my wife and I talked about like what it'd mean to lose my clearance and moving over into the private space and making that leap and saying, hey, it's going to be better for me, psychologically, emotionally, and so on, and put me in a better space. And honestly, I went from 10 miles an hour up to 60, still not that 100-mile-an-hour pace I was used to from the Marine Corps, but at least I could understand it. And I've been happy not to go back to the government space ever since.
Well, one, thank you for doing cleared work. It's difficult work. It supports the mission, but I totally hear you on the pace at which it goes. And if it's not for you, I applaud you and your Gibbs slapping wife that got you out of that. Sometimes it's, we say the hardest job sometimes is not the person on the front, but the person supporting them from behind. So, yeah. I loved in our pre-call, you mentioned you're taught to give everything to the mission when you're in the military. But when you work for a company, the mission becomes enjoying and experiencing life, which I'm going to disagree. That I think is your really great mentality. I was coaching somebody earlier, and you know who you are, about the fact that a job will be thrown at you, and most of us are willing to give 120% without thinking of everything else. So I love your quote that says your mission when you're working in the civilian world is to enjoy and experience life. So tell us a little bit more about this mentality. And I really love this example, the time you refused to miss your son's first day at kindergarten.
Yeah, that all actually comes from my dad. My dad had 3 jobs growing up, and he was away for pretty much everything. He was amazing when he was around, but he was trying to give us the best life he could. So no hate, no anger there. But I did say to myself that I would never do that. I would find a way that I would not miss these things. While I was working for a company, I was asked on a Friday to jump on a sales call. Totally fine to support someone who was out of office. Happens all the time. So I was like, yeah, absolutely, no problem. Then the salesperson kind of threw me under the bus and said, hey, Rob's going to be out there next week and support you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I cannot do that. I have time off on Monday. I am absolutely not going to be there. And they kind of took me aside and say, well, we need this. There's no one else available. You have to go. We got on the call with the customer, and this is not the right way to do it, but it was the only option I had at the time. I told the customer, hey, do you mind if I show up on Tuesday instead of Monday? My salesperson in the background was messaging me like, what are you doing? You're going to lose us money, blah, blah, and just yelling and screaming at me in text. And the customer was like, absolutely, no problem. Like, and it was my son's very first day of school, kindergarten, like first day ever school, on the day off for years. It felt like I'd put it on like months and months ago. So like no way ever would I miss that. And this job tried to get me to miss it. And I was actually yelled at by my boss for forcing us to change a contract and all kinds of things. I was at a new job in 2 weeks after that. And that was of my own free volition. I did not want to work at a place that forced me, as I had promised to myself after my dad's example, that I'd miss stuff like that. So what I mean by you're there to experience life is that a job is a job. Like in the military, and there's a mission. You go after that mission. In a corporate world, in a private space, there might be a really good mission. It might be a nonprofit saving, the ocean or something like that. There may be really good missions. I'm not trying to discount that, but most for-profit companies are for-profit. You are replaceable, you are expendable, you are a cog in the wheel of that corporation. You might be well appreciated, you might be well loved in there, and it might be a family environment. But at the end of the day, that company will move on when you move on. It's not going to be there forever. And so you need to put in what you feel is as the effort that you want to put into that job, but you should never, ever sacrifice life experiences for a job, ever. It's not worth it. And I saw what it did to my dad. I won't let it do to me. And so that's what I mean by that. Don't put your whole self into your work. I think 110% is the 100 miles an hour that I was talking about earlier. But if a job decides that I need to be somewhere on an important day for my son, I'll go find another job. That's the other thing. A lot of people aren't ready to sacrifice their current role and responsibilities for that kind of life experience. I will go be a Walmart greeter if it means that I can be around my family when they need me or when they have an experience. So I don't DGAF. Yeah.
I was going to say, I've been dying to ask this next question because I was so excited to learn about it. But after hearing that story, that might be my favorite question that you've answered. So no pressure, but this is going to be another good one. But that is a beautiful story and a good reminder that at work, we have to be our most authentic self, which is being your most authentic self and doing the things that matter to you. So thanks for that great reminder. Again, no pressure, Rob, but I'm teeing it up here for you.
Sure.
So I heard that you have a superpower. Is that true?
I feel I do. I feel like I have a superpower.
Okay, well, here's the one that I heard. So not the one about, flying through buildings or anything like that. But I heard that you just love learning and that you're okay with being wrong. So can we all just take a moment here and give a golf clap for the ability to be wrong in the moment? I appreciate that very much.
I love being wrong. I do.
You do. You love being wrong. Why is that so important? And how can others get in on this good superpower?
So I think I had a cheat code for the superpower. I had my villain story where I fell into the vat of ooze or whatever. I worked at a place where I was quite literally the dumbest person in the room. The people I worked with were just ninjas. I didn't even compete. I was not even close to what they could do. And it was so amazing because they were all welcoming. They all were teaching. If you want to sit down and have them walk you through it, they were. And I'm getting goosebumps thinking about that experience because it was awesome. And I don't know if we have a lot of spaces that are like that. Schools should be, and I don't know if there always are, but making an assumption, making a guess at things and being wrong about it and be like, yeah, no problem. Here's the right way to do it was really just a life-turning experience. For those who were with me in the Marine Corps, they know that I had quite the ego when I was in, especially in cybersecurity space.
You mean there are Marines who don't have egos?
We can talk about what a required level of ego is in that space, but being in that work experience really transitioned me into loving that I didn't know stuff and being happy when I'm wrong. Because I think that Simon Sinek says it, but a lot of other people say it, motivational speakers and stuff. When you're not wrong, you aren't learning. When you are wrong, you are learning. You have a chance to learn. And I like learning, and I think that that's the way you progress. So why wouldn't you be happy about being wrong, because like that's the time you're getting better. If you're right, then you're not getting better.
Well, I think you also have another superpower, because if it wasn't for this superpower, I actually wouldn't have met you or have had the opportunity to work with you. And you and I sort of share this superpower of building community. It's a very special superpower because you take a lot of grief. You have to have a lot of ingenuity. You have to, just a little bit of grief, just a little bit. I still have the scars on my back from several of them. So you founded something that you mentioned earlier, Nova Hackers. Like many of our other guests, sort of build their own tribe, build their own community, because you were struggling to find one. And I think that that's really important, that, you know, you couldn't find your tribe. You didn't realize you were a leader. You didn't realize you liked being wrong. You know, all these superpowers, you probably had this epiphany, or, you know, somebody hit you alongside the head or something. I don't know.
Multiple times.
Well, multiple times. That's good. You know, no scars on your back. So you kept pushing to have this community, even though you had several setbacks. What inspired you to create a community to help others?
Selfishness. Honestly, when I first, and it wasn't called Nova Hackers initially, it was like cybersecurity meetup in DC or whatever.
Oh God, I remember that one.
Yeah. And so I was really, I don't know what the word is, jealous, I guess is the word. There were so many cool, interesting cybersecurity groups, and they were in Austin or LA or in Nevada. And when I went to the one in DC, there were 3 people. They all bickered, and they didn't have any idea what they wanted to do with the group. There was no organization or coordination. My mother will kill me if she ever sees this, but she is a planner, like down to the minute kind of person, or 5-minute increments, I think. And I got a little bit of that. And I get frustrated when there aren't plans in place or things put together. So when I went to that DC meeting, it was like, let's hang out and drink coffee. It was no like, I want to learn something. I want to move. I want to get better.
I know that gut wrenching moment when you're just looking there and you're like, God, you guys could be so much more, and just do it.
Yep. And so I started a group, said, hey, let's meet up. I know there's a bunch of DC people. Let's do it. And the first one I went to, not a single person showed up. I invited 23 some odd people. I went to LaFont Plaza and it was just empty. And I could have given up.
I've done that too. They've done that too.
And then I messaged everyone that said that would be there, and they all had excuses on why they couldn't make it. So I said, okay, we're going to do this again next month. Set up another one, showed up, and it's like a 23-minute commuter line to get to where I was going. And again, no one showed. Third time, I was like, okay, this is the last time. I'm going to, like, third time's a charm. If this doesn't work, I'm done. Invited a bunch of people, showed up, and I waited around, and I was like, it's not going to happen. And then Chris Gates comes around the corner a little late, but still shows up. And he's like, hey, is this the DC security meetup? I'm like, yes. And he's like, where's everyone else? And I'm like, you're the first. Congratulations. And he and I worked together on building it after that. And he and I are the co-founders of Nova Hackers. We are at 900 some odd members these days, and it's still going pretty strong. And it's a group that, like, we have DEF CON meetups sometimes, and it's a good collaborative group of people. We have our problems, and there's management stuff that has to go in there, but as any group that size, but it's a good group of people. And I've learned so much from that experience. Like, 1, managing such a large group. 2, just the shared knowledge that happens at those things. It is not sitting around and drinking coffee. It's everyone sharing information and how things work. And it's such a great experience. And I go just because I like to experience it. And even though I founded it, but like, it's more for me again than anyone else.
Love it.
Like I said, selfish.
No, it's beautiful. It's a great way to be out there. So I want to go back in time to the beginning of our conversation, and you were talking about that transition out of the military. And one thing you said oh, you wish you had slapped yourself in the head, was related to the VA benefits and ways that you could have handled that medical transition better. So I want to give you a little bit of runway here to talk about that and just kind of mention why it's so critical for those transitioning service members to make sure that they're documenting things early and really making sure they understand that VA process. So do you mind kind of sharing a little bit more about that?
Sure. I've just gotten denied for the third time for my VA benefits just a couple days ago, actually, which really hit pretty hard. One of the things that and every Marine does this, at least most of the Marines I was in with, they tough it out. They drink or eat that vitamin M, Motrin, and they just deal with it. And what you don't know in your 20s and early 20s and late teens is that all of that comes to bite you in your butt later on in life. When I was I barely went to medical ever. It was a negative for me. Like, you're missing out. You're letting your fellow Marines down by not being available. And it was rough because there's such a stigma about going to medical for anything that I don't have anything documented. And so as I was getting out, the transition team says, hey, go get a full workup and stuff like that. But that stigma is still there. I don't want to do all that. And because of that, I have quite literally nothing wrong with me getting out of the Marine Corps. And so what that translates to is all the things that were service related are not documented. So I don't have a way to go back in time and fix that. I have to find a doctor that will, conclusively say that this happened during this time. It might be unimportant, but like during my time in the Marine Corps, I lost all the feeling in my feet. I cannot feel the bottoms of my feet at all. I have permanent nerve damage, and that never really bothered me a ton because I could walk farther and I could run farther, and it didn't bother me. And Motrin was, the easy way out when it did hurt. And so I have gone back to the VA and said, this happened while I was in the Marine Corps. This is nerve damage. And they're like, yep, you have extensive nerve damage, but we have no documentation saying that it was part of while you're in the Marine Corps. So sorry, you're denied. And I had some PTSD stuff while I was in too, and that was not documented. So they're not claiming that as well. So every little thing that bothered me a little bit, even a tiny bit, I should have at least gotten seen for, and I didn't. And that is hurting me now because all of that is coming back to bite me, like I said. And VA benefits is a huge differentiator. And I mean, I'm not looking for more than my share of things. I think there are a lot more people that are worse off than I am in every way, shape, and form. But I am afraid that as my feet get worse, my wife, who is not 6'4", 240 pounds, is going to have a hard time, one, slapping me around anymore, but two, helping me with what I need to as I either can't walk or otherwise. And without VA benefits, I have to rely on either my savings or insurance or stuff like that. And it's just not as good. And so I screwed myself by toughing it out. And I hope that just anyone hearing this who's still in or exiting soon, please understand that, you might not feel it right now. You might not hear it right now. You might not understand what's going on in your head right now, but go get seen for everything. Complain about literally everything. Even if you don't go for VA benefits the minute you get out of the military, you may want to 10 years from then, and you don't want to be in my place. You don't want to be where they're denying you just because they have no documentation of it.
That's a really very poignant story because I know one too many Marines, and I'm married to one who did have those pains, did have those challenges, and it is part of the culture to say, tough it out. We're not going to show weakness. We're not going to go to medical. And I'm really very honored that you shared that story because it is something that everyone needs to hear. So let's turn to something fun. I'm dying to hear this one. You became the technical advisor for HBO's show Silicon.
Yeah.
Kudos. How did this come about? And how was it like applying your knowledge in the entertainment world? I mean, did they sex it up? Did they, make it more gruesome? What did they do?
I don't think they made, so if you've ever seen the show Silicon Valley, it is not sexy at all. But I wish there was a good reason for how I got involved with the show and something that's repeatable. And it kind of is, but it's a friend of a friend. And that's just how it worked out. And I mean, networking is your biggest superpower. And so that kind of happened because of it. But Silicon Valley's season 1 is based on an algorithm that compresses video and audio. I just happened to be a good friend with one of the people who built that at YouTube and built that at Google Video and built that at Facebook. And so when she was being consulted for Silicon Valley for their algorithm, and they were saying, hey, do you know anyone in cybersecurity? She's like, yeah, my friend Rob. And so that's kind of how that came about. But it is one of the weirdest experiences I've had in my life because I value my time. And I think time is one of the things that we never get back. And that goes the same reason for the not missing kid events and stuff like that. But when they first signed me up, I got $1,200 for an entire season of being on call while they were recording. And what that means is that at any moment for a 3-month period, they can call me up and say, hey, does this make sense? Does this line work? And what sucks about that is they record all the way into like midnight LA time, and that's 3 a.m. my time. And so I would get phone calls at all hours asking, hey, does this make sense? Does this work? But it was also a really good experience. I got to, and I didn't even know these existed, but I got to go to a premiere. I got to go to 3 of them, I think two or three. And it was a great experience there. I got to meet some good people, got to meet the actors, got to be on set. And I actually got to be in the writing room on season 6. And that was just a whole different experience. Being able to help design how the series ended and say what was possible and what wasn't was really amazing. Spitballing with the guy who made Beavis and Butthead, the producer that did that. He was awesome, very quiet, and just it was I don't know how to explain it. It was a great experience. They did work back and forth on making sure that things were in their real space, that things would work how we say they worked, and it was really great. Their attention to detail on making it believable and authentic, even though they were kind of, with season 6 going into the future space of what could be possible, they always kept it within a believable like boundary, whereas I know that there's a lot of shows that don't even try on that space.
Well, what a cool story. I know we were so excited to hear about that one. So, Rob, it has been an absolute pleasure getting to meet you, to learn from you, and hear your stories. Thank you for your vulnerability and willingness to share them. And appreciate you. And thanks for stopping by Exit Buddies.
Thanks for having me, Rachel. Appreciate it.
Rob, is there something you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I want to say happy birthday. All of the Marines out there, keep doing what you do and let us know if you ever need any help. All of our fellow Marines are here for you.
Thanks, Rob. Great seeing you again.
Absolutely.
It's always fun for me to have more in-depth conversations with folks that I've seen at networking events. Like I've seen Rob at several throughout the Washington, D.C. area. And I loved hearing his story of being wrong, because I know that that's really hard for a lot of military folks, to being in an environment where they fail, they're wrong, and they have to learn. And I'm so thrilled that he was in such a supportive environment to be able to learn, and he was able to put that forth in building his own community with Nova Hackers. So that's a wrap, Exit Buddies. We've learned a lot today. Share this episode with your fellow service members. Hit follow for more stories, and keep looking for your own course, because we're here to inspire you. Catch you next time.